This is Fowl Players Radio, your podcast for arts, entertainment, and pop culture. Welcome. My name is Michael Spedden, your host. Every episode features fun, fascinating stories about people in the performing arts, actors, authors, dancers, writers, musicians, athletes, you name it. Folks who are center stage, backstage, on camera, or behind the scenes. Sit back and listen. Let's have some fun. Fowl Players Radio is a proud production of the Fowl Players Group and the official podcast of the Fowl Players of Perryville. Hey folks, Michael Spedden here, Fowl Players Radio. This is an encore presentation. We're moving this onto our YouTube site from our audio site, fowlplayersradio.com. This is Season 5, Episode 52. Originally aired September 18th of 2020. It features Suze Lanier. Suze has had a long and illustrious career. She's done theater, television, movies. She's also a very accomplished singer and songwriter. We would know her from The Hills Have Eyes. With it being Halloween week, I thought we would bring this episode back because she talks a lot about her role in The Hills Have Eyes with Michael Berryman. You'll also remember her from Happy Days. If you were a kid in the 70s watching Saturday morning television, you'd remember her from the Sid and Marty Krofft Power Hour. She was on Electro-Woman and Dyna-Girl, The Kids from C.A.P.E.R. She played Vinnie Barbarino's girlfriend, Bambi, on Welcome Back Kotter. She was Chrissy Snow in the original pilot episode of Three's Company with Joyce DeWitt and John Ritter. She also played on Barnaby Jones with Buddy Ebsen. She was on Alice and many, many more. She's had a very great and long career and lots of things for us to talk about. And I really think you're going to enjoy this episode. The Fowl Players of Perryville will be returning to Fifth Company Brewing on December 10th, 2022. For tickets, go to fifthcompanybrewing.com. Also, the Fowl Players of Perryville will be doing another murder mystery show on New Year's Eve on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, www.wmsr.com. Also, for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, don't forget your Polar Express tickets. That's right around the corner, www.wmsr.com. So enjoy. We'll be back with Suze Lanier right after these words.
Hi, this is Paul Castiglia, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio, the one-stop shop for all your pop culture needs.
Hello, this is John Piet,
Kevin Schmidt,
and Jerry Bozick.
And we're August, a little band from Virginia. You can hear our story, other stories from the legendary Baltimore, D.C. music scene, and much, much more with Michael Spedden on Fowl Players Radio. You can find it at www.fowlplayersradio.com, on YouTube, and wherever you find podcasts online. Keep rocking.
Hi, this is Kim of Kim's Crypt, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio.
Suze Lanier-Bramlett, welcome to the show. It looks like you've got some new projects coming out here, and we'd love to hear all about them. Go ahead and tell us what's going on.
You know, it's kind of hard to have a lot going on during a pandemic, but I am fortunate enough to be able to say that in December, before the pandemic, I shot a pilot for a new comedy with Casper Van Dien called Stripped. Mm-hmm. And I play an older woman named Ida, who and it's a comedy and it's sitcom. So, you know, I got my start doing sitcom. Mm-hmm. And pretty much, I mean, I started in the theater actually, but I think I got a reputation for doing sitcom in the day, and it was just so refreshing. Mm-hmm. to be able to go back and do a sitcom finally. I hadn't done one in a while.
Right.
And then Red Rooms is intended, it's produced by Brooke Lewis and directed by Joshua Butler, and that is intended to be streamed, and it's a little bit of a horror segment with some pretty good actors in it, and so we'll see. We taped that after COVID, and I shot that at my own house, so I had to be crew, makeup artist, actor, and set up the camera, and you know, so we had one day of rehearsal to get all that straightened out, and then it was filmed on my iPhone, and then it will be edited through editing bay, but a lot of stuff is filmed right now on iPhones.
Oh yes, it is.
Different things, you know, just to make it accessible. And we did that in February when it was or no, March, I think. But that was when, it was not safe to have a crew in or anything like that.
Right,
So.
right. So you had mentioned that this was, Stripped was going to be a TV series. Do you know what network they plan to have it on, or is it?
No, I think it's still being shopped.
Oh, okay.
I'm not real sure. It's independently owned and produced.
Oh, okay.
But there's some reasonable names in it, and so we'll see what happens. It's pretty funny. I've seen a couple of clips of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, and it's a lot of fun. Mark Klebanoff is the director and creator of that, with Christophe St. John, who passed away, as people know. And so he had been one of the writers on it years ago. So I think that Mark Klebanoff decided it was time to get it produced.
Right. And the same thing with Red Rooms. You said that was going to be on a streaming service. Do you know which one that would be on?
No, I don't get into that part of it. I just do my job, get my check, and go home.
Right. Okay.
And that's my job as an actor. I used to teach acting, and I would tell actors, I would say, okay, an actor's job is just to act. Now maybe those times are changing, when an actor acts, the director directs it, and the actor's job is to follow the direction, So I don't get into, unless I'm producing something myself, I don't get into anybody's business.
Sure. I have to agree with you too in what you were saying about, how there's sort of this new normal, as actors. Our auditions have been over Skype and over Zoom and self-taped, and sent in. We're not going to New York and Philly like we had been, previously. We're on the East Coast. They were also saying that, you better get yourself some equipment and learn how to use it, because there may be some things that you're going to be filming yourself for certain projects, and they're expecting people to know those things now. These are very, very interesting times, like nobody's ever seen before. It'll be interesting to see how these things turn out,
Absolutely. Well, I have had years of a career as an actual photographer.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah, tell us about that a bit. Yeah.
So I have a studio in my place, and I have very nice lighting and backdrops, so many backdrops and stuff like that. So because I had done that for so many years, I have a really good understanding of lighting and measuring the light, and some of it's mathematical, and then and I've also produced my own and shot and directed my own music videos way before COVID. I haven't even done one lately. And so I have a couple of music videos on YouTube that I wrote and directed. Of course, they go to songs that I wrote, because I'm a singer-songwriter, but that is so much fun, because it's my vision, and because I already know how to do that, I don't even have to do it in my studio. I can go on location with a friend and with one person, and we can set up and shoot. So
right.
I don't know. I love that creative part of it. And self-tape auditions were happening way before COVID. I love them because I live near Malibu, and it's not that easy to drive to Hollywood every time there's an audition.
Right.
It's much more relaxing environment to be able to give it your best shot. You haven't driven all day to get there and figured out you wore the wrong thing after you got there, or and then you can't get home to change. So, and you don't have to sit there and wait for hours. So I think it's just a fabulous new thing. And now we'll get to meet with some of the casting directors on EchoCast Live.
Right.
So it'll be the same pretty much thing, except that you're meeting with the casting director at home. I think they're still working the kinks out with that. I don't know for sure, but I love the fact that we can produce our own stuff.
Yes, yes, yeah. I enjoy it too. You know, we live in northeastern Maryland, right near the Delaware line, actually. We're probably just as close to Philly as we are to Baltimore. It is a little bit nicer not having to drive there or head up to New York for an audition. You know, it can be done just right here. And, you know, we were doing a little bit of that, but that was really not the rule. That was more the exception, you know, up until COVID, you know, started. So we would have those once in a while, but it wasn't really all the time. Well, best of luck with these new projects that are coming out and everything. I hope they're successful, and you know, I really hope for the best for you with those.
Well,
Looking,
thanks.
yeah, and looking back here, I'm looking back over your resume here, and you know, you were on so many shows I loved growing up.
Oh,
I just cannot wait to hear some of these stories that you may have about them. I can see that you were on, looks like one of the earlier seasons of Happy Days.
that was actually my first job.
Is that
Happy
right?
Days was my first job in LA, not my first job. I'd worked in New York,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I had done a ton of dinner theater on the road.
Hmm.
And I had done a movie in Dallas called The Pickle Goes in the Middle, which is a comedy with some actors that you would recognize. Charlie Dell Smith is in that, some other people. But that was my actual, I think, first commercial release
Hmm.
was The Pickle Goes in the Middle. It was a comedy. And I had shot that in Dallas. And so
Right.
when I moved to LA, I had gone to high school with one of the producers of
Oh.
Happy Days and writers, William S. Bickley. And we had been teamed up as acting mates in high school, winning interscholastic league awards and stuff. So when I got to LA, he invited me to the lot at Paramount and to the set. And I'd never been on a Hollywood set before. I was so excited.
Hmm.
And Gary Marshall was there, and Ron Howard and everybody, and Henry Winkler came up and go, "Whoa, oh man, make him my girlfriend." And they wrote me in that week. And
Oh.
and it was I was, because of Bill, I was working in Hollywood like the second day I got here.
Mhm.
So that was pretty lucky.
One of my favorites when I was growing up, you know, that was Tuesday night. It was always Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and then Three's Company. And it looks like you had some ties to Three's Company at that time, too. You were in the pilot playing the part of Chrissy.
Right. I was I think I was the second Chrissy, not the first, but I was the Chrissy that got the pilot sold. And John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and myself. And, you know, I only had a couple of days to rehearse and shoot that, because I had been out in the desert of the Hills Have Eyes, working on the Hills Have Eyes. And so it was a last minute kind of, they were replacing someone they already had as Chrissy.
Okay.
So I think that there was an issue with how much my agent had pressed them for money. You know, I got paid very well to do that pilot, but I only worked for a couple of days and then shot it in front of a live audience.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, I was a quick learner, and, you know, I'm used to dinner theater where you have to, you know, really be on your toes in terms of memorization.
Yes, you do.
And, you know, it's just one of those things that didn't work out. I mean, Suzanne got it. So part of being an actor is also being rejected. And so, know how to handle that. And that was just one of those things, you know?
For the record, I did see some footage from that, and I thought you made a fine Chrissy.
Thank you.
I thought you made a mighty fine Chrissy, yes.
You know, I didn't even know the pilot existed. And then somebody called me and said they were releasing my pilot on the Blu-ray, the DVD package or something like that. And I thought, well, is that even legal? I mean, nobody even asked me, but I guess it is. I guess ABC owns it, so I guess they can do what they want. But I never saw my performance until I saw it from that.
Is that right? And how long after that, I guess, was that like in just recent years they released it, or was it?
Yeah. I you know, I don't know. It's been 15 years or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't even have it on my resume. And then when I, you know, would be interviewed, an interviewer would say, "Oh, what was it like to be Chrissy on Three's Company?" Well, how'd you know I did that? You know?
Right.
So I finally just put it on, you know, on my credits because the fans knew about it before I did.
Right. Well, that's an interesting piece of trivia too. To have something like that come out years later. I mean, I think that's just, yeah, that had to be pretty neat to have somebody report that to you, and then you saw it, and you're like, wow, okay,
Yeah. I mean, I thought Suzanne did a great job. I don't have anything bad to say about her.
Certainly, yeah.
She was a great Chrissy, and I was fine. I got a couple of series pilots of my own after that.
Sure.
That I was the star of, and so I did a number of pilots, and sometimes they go and sometimes they don't.
Right.
And most of the time they don't. Back then they would shoot tons of pilots every season. And then the network would, pick which ones they wanted to release. And so it was a crapshoot always to begin with. Right.
Yeah, that's how it goes with those, Yeah, I was also looking, and I saw that you were a series regular on Tony, Orlando, and Dawn. And you told me when we were kind of getting set up to do the interview here that you had done some stand-up comedy with George Carlin. And tell us about who you kind of performed with on that show.
Oh my gosh, that was fun. Well, it was one of my earlier credits too in Hollywood, and I was signed with ICM, or a really good agent, and he called and he said, "I want you need to do a 5-minute stand-up bit." Now my agent, who was Pat Paulson's agent.
Oh yeah.
And Pat Paulson was a series regular on Laugh-In.
Yes, he was.
So I was already hooked into the stand-up world from that aspect.
Yeah.
So my agent saw me on the road doing Last of the Red Hot Lovers with Pat Paulson.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and that's how I got to Hollywood. And he said, put together a 5-minute, we can get you a comedy writer and put together a 5-minute comedy bit. I want you to audition for Tony, Orlando, and Dawn and the Rainbow Hour. And I said, well, what if I just write it? And he goes, well, let me see what you got. So I wrote a little thing, and he thought it was funny. And so I competed against all these seasoned stand-up actors that had played all the comedy clubs and in the Improv and all those places in town, and lots of girls, and they were looking for a Goldie Hawn kind of thing, character. And so I decided to be Miss Mississippi and twirl on the audition, and twirl badly. And I guess they thought it was funny, and then decided to make that part of the show that every week I would be another Miss something, and talking about whatever that state is famous for,
Okay, right.
And so I got cast. George Carlin got cast on it. Nancy Steen, Edie McClurg.
Sure.
And there were some others I can't remember. And anyway, they teamed me and George Carlin up a lot. And this was right before Saturday Night Live. And from our work on Tony Orlando, we were both approached to audition to audition for the original C.A.P.E.R, the very first season of Saturday Night Live.
Is that right? Wow.
And we both turned it down because we were making such good money on an already proven show, and we didn't know if Saturday Night Live would go. Duh. So, that was a real bad move. But I was under contract, and it would have been hard to get out of it. But at any rate, Tony Orlando got canceled, and Saturday Night Live is still on the air after all these years. So,
right.
Yeah, I could probably write a book about bad choices or rejection, but I've also had some good times. So
Right. I could write one about rejection, but not bad choices yet. I don't think, but haven't had enough choices to make bad ones yet. So we'll see how that goes. How about Barnaby Jones? It said that you did an episode of that here. Did you work with Buddy Ebsen?
Oh yeah, he was so nice. He's such a great guy, and that show, I guest starred on that show with Pat Hingle. And Pat Hingle was one of my favorite actors. He's he starred in the movie Splendor in the Grass, and I was just a huge Pat Hingle fan. And I think he also played with James Dean in East of Eden, maybe. I'm not sure, I think. But anyway, he was so cool. And we became friends from that show because he knew I was mostly from the theater. And even though acting is acting, there's slightly different techniques and things I was not aware of, like asking for a sandbag if you're having a hard time finding your mark. You can't look down and go, okay. And I had this scene that was really important that I stop exactly on my mark, and I kept stepping over it. And so he called me aside and he said, you're a really good actress. Come to my trailer at lunch. I want to tell you a few things. And I said, okay. So I took my lunch and I went to his dressing room, and he goes, okay, so here are the things you asked for. And here's the, if you feel too short in the scene, ask for a half apple box. Or if you need a sandbag, ask for the sandbag so that you can make your mark. Then your toes hit it and you don't look down to make sure you hit your mark. Just little tricks like that people that have never been on a set or they don't know what's involved with acting, it's particularly for the camera, it's very precise and it's very small. And every little thing that you do is noticeable because, there's this huge camera in front of your face, and so you really have to bring it down, and there's a film technique, and he was just such a wonderful teacher. And we continued to be friends. I did a couple of plays here in LA, and he was always in the audience and supporting me.
Well, that's great. That's great. Yeah, he was a song and dance man for a long time. He had a lot of interest. He was known for like a very interesting dancing technique that he had. He had a style that was kind of all of his own too. And I'd heard a lot of people, kind of talk about that, how he was just, when he would do his dance routines, he was kind of, very unique as compared to other people. And that's great that you had somebody like that to kind of, pull you under his wing and show you some things too.
Well, Buddy Ebsen was a great dancer.
Yes, he was.
I worked with Buddy Ebsen, and then I did a tour with Donald O'Connor, and they both taught me their dance routines. And so I was a dancer as well. And so it was wonderful being on the road with Donald O'Connor because we would do the play, and then after the play we would come out after for the audience, and the two of us would be in tap shoes, and we'd go Donald O'Connor's one of the most famous dancers that ever lived.
Yes,
and singing in the rain with Gene Kelly, and so I was very blessed.
Right. Somebody who, like me, who has had, I'm probably the worst dancer on earth, and which is why when I did theater, I was a singer. I would have singing parts, but the dancing, not so much. But I look at things like Singing in the Rain and some of those other things, especially when he was, teamed up with, Gene Kelly and stuff. It's just amazing the things that those two were able to do. I mean, just I just look at the shape those guys must have been in, let alone just the coordination and everything. That is really something that I respect. The ability to do that.
Unlike what it is like today. Even when, I mean, those guys are way older than me, and just wanting to know what direction I was going to go in as a young girl, you know that you have more opportunities if you sing. It was called a triple threat.
Yep.
Sing, dance, and act. And we went to classes. I would go to dance class for 5 hours a day, every 5 days a week or more. And so we were all in really good shape because we knew to be able to compete. And then you go to your voice class, and then you go to your acting class. And so we were very, very well trained in, and Donald O'Connor actually went to the Hollywood, you know, he grew up in LA a lot of the time, and he went to high school where, you know, on the lot. And so he was always in, you know, he learned all those. He had to be in class the whole time. It's kind of like that Judy Garland story. You know, you saw the new remake of, Judy, you know, with Renee Zellweger. And as a little girl, Judy Garland was being trained all day long as a child. That they had no life. That was just, you know, they're little robots. Well, even I kind of had that, you know, we were just trained early.
Right. Hope you're enjoying this episode of Fowl Players Radio. We'll be back right after these words.
Hi, everybody. Dwight Weems from Gaz the Fun Band, and you're watching and listening to Fowl Players Radio.
Hi, this is Bud Becker, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio.
This is A.D. Adams, and you are tuned in to Fowl Players Radio with your host, Michael Spedden.
Yeah, hi, this is David Simmons from DC Star, and I am just encouraging all of you to tune in to Michael Spedden's show on Fowl Players Radio and love the rock and roll of the past and the art of the future.
Yep. I was looking at Welcome Back Kotter. You had, you know, a number of episodes of Welcome Back Kotter as Bambi. You played Vinnie's girlfriend.
Yep. Yeah, that was fun. I was a sweat hog, and I ended up being really good friends with all of the sweat hogs, as well as Gabe and you know, Ron and Bobby are gone. I spent 4th of July a couple of years ago with Lawrence Hilton Jacobs.
Oh, yeah.
And so he doesn't live far from me, and so we're still in touch. And I don't see John, but you know, he just kind of rose to another level. So but you know, we were all real close. You know, when you're on a set and you're working like that, it brings you together. And then Bobby was really good friends with who ended up being my brother-in-law, who was one of the creators of the show.
Oh.
But I didn't know him. He ended up being my brother-in-law because I was on the show. I didn't know him when I got on the show.
Oh,
so
okay.
There was no nepotism there.
Right.
But I got the show, and then became friends with Eric Cohen, and he married my sister, and they're still married. But Bobby and Eric were dear friends, and so I was friends with Bobby up until the end, and Ron and I kept up with each other until he died.
Yeah. Bob and Ron, they were both young men when they died. They weren't, you know, they were only, I think, in their 50s or something like that. It was just a real shame to hear that, you know, because they had just done like a TV Land special or something that kind of reunited, you know, the Sweat Hogs on, I guess it was Nick at Night that they had that on. And then it was not too long after that happened. And such a shame, because I've heard other interviews about them and people that have worked with them, and they've just, you know, thought the world of them, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They were really great guys.
Yep.
Marsha's gone too.
Yes. Yeah, Mrs. Cotter. Yeah. That was. Yeah. and John Travolta, he played his boy, he played, his girlfriend and everything. And, he was, I think, a number of years ago, when he lost his son, then a number of things came out about him that were kind of negative in the press. A lot of people were kind of, nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of celebrities have to deal with it. And then just other people too, this pounce mentality where, one thing goes wrong and then somebody has something negative, then all of a sudden you're just completely piled upon. When he was in Baltimore a number of years ago, and I won't go on about it, but he was filming a movie called Ladder 49, and he played a fireman. And then there was a bar in my neighborhood where I lived at the time where they were filming a scene, and it was known that he was going to be there, and apparently he had agreed through his publicist or somebody to meet people afterwards. And there was a line that had to have been a half a mile long, waiting for him to come out and sign autographs, to shake hands and everything. And I tell you what, everybody in that line, he looked them in the eye. He was very sincere and very kind to them. He would sign everything, or sign things for people, shake hands. He's a very kind, and I tell you what, I don't know about any of those things that happen, what's true or what not, but I tell you, he's a gentleman. He is a gentleman.
He's a doll. He's a doll. As a person, he is so nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I loved him, and he's just the sweetest man. So I don't care what they say about him, you know. And it certainly hasn't hurt his career.
It certainly hasn't,
he's a wonderful actor, and so, I mean, is he the greatest actor that ever lived? I don't know. I mean, I respect his talent, but I think he's just as good as person as he is an actor.
Yeah, he's a gentleman. He's a very genuine person. That I noticed that day. And anybody else could have just kind of blown through it or phoned it in, but he was just very, very sincere with everybody and very kind. And I really noticed it, and you could tell it was very heartfelt with him, which is just great. I'm looking too, and I'm seeing Electro-Woman and Dyna-Girl. And was that Sid and Marty Krofft?
Yeah.
That was. Yeah. I tell you, Saturday mornings, if it wasn't Hanna-Barbera, it was all about Sid and Marty Krofft back in those days. And I used to, here I was sitting in front of the TV back then with a bowl of Rice Krispies, some milk, and probably about a half inch of sugar on it, just watching these shows in the morning. Tell us about your experience on that show.
Well, I don't really remember that show too much. I did several episodes of it, and Deidre Hall was Electro-Woman, and Judy Strangest was Dyna-Girl, and basically, I had to wear a tutu. I mean, the most interesting thing was that I had a scene with a tiger, and nobody told me that I should tell them when I'm having my period, and the tiger started acting weird and pacing, and the trainer goes, "I'm sorry, is anybody having their time of the month?" I said, "Yes," and he said, "Oh my God, get her out of here."
Oh my God, really?
And the tiger was just about ready to pounce.
Oh my God!
And that was pretty scary, but so we had to wait a couple of days before, to finish shooting until, it was over. But so there's a little inside scoop about that.
Well, yeah, well, I told my manager I never want to work with bears or lions or tigers or anything like that. And you're braver than I am just to go on set to have that there. And I didn't realize what you just told me was kind of a thing with that. But geez, a whiz. And I guess there was somebody there at all times, I guess, whenever that.
Well, yeah, the trainer was there, and that never bothered me at all. I mean, I as long as the trainer's there, I'm not scared to work with animals or anything.
Right.
We when I did The Hills Have Eyes, I know you're going to bring that up. I think the best actors in The Hills Have Eyes really were the dogs.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
And so those dogs were well trained, and and could do things that were amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and probably got paid as much as we did, if not more. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so I love working with animals, actually.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah, they work. Those dogs were, very well trained, and you really did a good part in that movie there. So speaking of which, tell us about The Hills Have Eyes. I tell you, that was a great movie. It was one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and that was a rough movie too. I mean, some of the things in there were kind of a little bit, more, I guess the killers were a little more, what can I say, brutal than other films that I'd really seen up until that point, So tell us about this project. I mean, I'm sure you've got lots of great stories about it.
Oh, yeah, a lot, because, we were, that was I think initially the shoot was 3 weeks, and then we had to go do pickups another couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was spending a lot of time with Wes Craven,
Mm-hmm.
and it was his second film, so he was still, I mean, he was always very, very sweet, and I was doing well in Hollywood when they were casting that, and Gus Shermer and Carol Prop called me in to just have a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They already knew my work, and pretty much I did a little bit of improv with Wes, and pretty much got the part, the starring role of the movie there on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was initially called Blood Relations.
Yes.
And
yes.
I never really liked the name of it,
Mm-hmm.
And I complained to Wes. I said, don't call it that. It makes it really cheesy. And I didn't, however, expect for them to rename it The Hills Have Eyes.
Right.
And I certainly, I don't tell directors or producers what to name their projects. God, that sounded a little arrogant. But only when we were having a little wine or whatever, like when we were hanging out, I would say, blood relations, ooh, it sounds bloody. And so anyway, even though it was somewhat bloody,
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked that they named it The Hills Have Eyes, actually. And now I love the name, but, and it's a cliche. Like, my friend was in, I think, Baltimore recently, and was at a bar and was drinking a drink called The Hills Have Eyes. You know, so
wouldn't surprise me there.
It's sort of a cliche word, and I can go online and see somebody, oh man, that guy looked like a creep from The Hills Have Eyes or something.
Yeah. Did you get to know Michael Berryman?
Michael and I are like brother and sister.
Is that
still.
right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I talk to him probably. I used to see him all the time because he was my neighbor, and then he and his wife relocated to Florida, which was heartbreaking to me. And anyway, they live in Florida, so we talk on the phone at least every 2 weeks or so, and we did a number of the conventions together. He does a lot more than I do. He likes them more than I do. I don't love to go to conventions so much, but he does. And so we did some of those together. So I haven't seen him, of course, during COVID, but we have talked over the phone quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
He stars in my music video with me called Watch What You Ask For.
Okay.
And when he knew that I was doing that song, he came to all my gigs in LA when I was performing with my band, and he never ever missed a show, and unless he was out of town. And so he wanted to be in the music video, and I said, okay, totally, I'm going to write this for us. And so it shows Michael Berryman and I only a few years ago in the music video, because that's recent, called Watch What You Ask For, on my YouTube channel, Suze Lanier-Bramlett.
Okay. Yeah, he's in a couple of the Motley Crue videos that I remember from high school. He played the principal, I think, in the Smoking in the Boys Room video. And and I'd known a number of people that have gone to conventions and met him, and you know, they told me too that he's, you know, a number of people have told me. I've never been to the conventions and seen him, but I've also heard from a lot of people that he's a very kind person too. Just a very nice person, very genuine, and you know, and I also liked him in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a excuse me. He's a great guy.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. You know, so tell me a little more about your music and in your band.
Well, I in 1977, I met the love of my life, Delaney Bramlett, and who had been had a big rock and roll band in the late 60s, early 70s called Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And Delaney had written and produced Eric Clapton's first album. And has played with everybody. He was a shin dog on the TV show called Shindig. And so he teamed up with Leon Russell, and they wrote lots of music together. And so when we got together as a couple, I got an audition for Brenda Palma, I believe. He was looking for a girl who could be in lead a band. And I hadn't done that, but I had sung in musicals.
Right.
So Delaney put a band together for me, and I went and did that audition. I didn't get it. I don't know who got it, but the audition was on stage at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood.
Okay.
I had Elvis Presley's guitar player. Delaney had put me together the best players in the world.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, it was an amazing experience. And I went, okay, I could really dig doing this. And so Delaney was also a songwriter. He wrote Superstar, Never Ending Song of Love, Let It Rain, a bunch of hits. And so we started collaborating, me mostly with lyrics and him with the music, a good bit. And so in 1984, I just decided to play the Palomino in Hollywood, and 300 people showed up, and the rest was history. Now when I work, I do a little comedy. So it's a little bit of cabaret, rock and roll, swamp. I call it swamp music, and blues, and some of it's funny and some of it's very poignant and touching. And I love to write, and it also is a wonderful thing when I'm feeling creative and I'm not up for any part in the acting world, to be able to sit down at the piano and just, you know, write my own stuff and put out a CD, or put something out. And I'm not dependent on a casting director or a director deciding whether or not I'm right for the role or not, you know. So it keeps me sane. And I love doing music. And if you said, okay, pick one, it would definitely be music.
Oh, okay. I'm an old band guy myself. I played in bands until, I played in bands my entire life, ever since I was 13. And, I still write, you know, and I don't play as much anymore, so I've been doing more acting lately, but, I still have it, and I still get out, and I do about 5 or 6 shows a year. I have an acoustic duo now, and it's part comedy as well. You know, we write silly songs, like I guess you could kind of compare our stuff to get an idea, like A Boy Named Sue, like that kind of sound, that kind of song is kind of what we do. And it's a lot of fun. You know, it's definitely a release, and, you know, sitting down and writing music is very, very therapeutic as well. I'm sure you'll agree.
Oh, yeah. And I really don't, you know, I guess it's my favorite thing to do. Now, right now I'm writing a book, and because COVID, you know, you have more time on your hands.
Sure, you do. Yeah.
And so I plan to have this book out and finished, not out particularly, but finished by December.
Right.
So I'm writing every single day. So
Good.
yeah.
Good. So you plan on having that out, and is it, I guess, just a memoir, I guess. Is that what you're
That's what I've been told it would be called, a memoir.
uh-huh.
And here's the thing. It's only 6 months of my life. When I was a kid in New York City.
Right.
So
right.
it's only 6 months in 1967.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's dark, and
Mhm.
it's a murder, and it's a well-known murder. And I was very connected to that. And so it really captures the adventure of a young girl going to New York to become an actress, and gets involved in dark and seedy scene.
Wow.
And it is a memoir. So,
Wow.
And I survived it, so that's cool.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you survived. I'm glad
Yeah,
you survived
me too.
it. Yeah. Oh boy. So one thing I wanted to ask you here, and before we go, one thing I kind of like to ask people, and this is kind of fun. I have bands on a lot of times, or singers, musicians. I ask them about if they've ever had any Spinal Tap moments on stage, and you're telling me you have a background in theater and in dinner theater. Had you had any of the equivalent happen, something go horribly wrong on stage where you kind of had to pull it together and get back on track, or you or anybody else that was up there, just something go horribly bad or something like that, like a war story?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that question is I was doing a national tour with Ed Kooky Burns from 77 Sunset Strip.
Sure. Okay.
And we were doing a play, and I cannot remember the name of it right this minute. It was some little romantic comedy. But anyway, we were in, I can't remember what town, and on the edge of the theater, a man keeled over on the stage.
Oh my God.
And Ed looked at me and he goes, "What's going on?" Under his breath, "What's going on?" And I go, "I don't know." And so I said, "We've got to stop." He said, "We can't stop. We're taught as actors that we don't stop. You got to keep going." But I said, "And we have to stop. This guy could be dead." And so I went over, and he had a heart attack. And here's this body on the stage, Well, naturally, we said, "Quick, is there a doctor in the house?" And call 911. And the ambulance came. We had to stop the play that night,
Sure,
and they had to refund everybody, and everybody, they had to rebook or whatever. And I think that's the worst thing that's ever happened for someone, an audience member to just keel over on the stage and you're performing,
Jeez,
So, I hope he made it. I really hope he made it. I don't think he did, but I think he was gone when he hit the stage. But but I don't want to know, I guess.
Right.
But that was years and years ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that. I don't think it could get much worse than that. Truthfully, yeah, I think that's probably the worst thing that could possibly happen while you're performing. Well, I want to thank you for spending time with us today here on Fowl Players Radio, and you've got some really great stories, and I've enjoyed having you today. And I'm sure
thank you.
Once this is released, my listeners are really going to enjoy this too. Finally, what I'd like to just give you an opportunity to plug away as shamelessly as you would like to be. Anything that you'd like to plug again, or your websites and YouTube channels and all that good stuff, go right ahead.
Okay, well, everything's under Suze Lanier-Bramlett. Now, a lot of Hills Have Eyes fans probably know me as Susan Lanier, but when I got married, I changed it to Suze Lanier-Bramlett. Delaney Bramlett is who I married. And I'm on Instagram as Suze Lanier. Suze Lanier, Lanier. I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel as Suze Lanier-Bramlett with music videos, and a fan page on Facebook where I will have CDs and different things for sale. I'm also on Cameo. If anybody wants me to do a shout out on Cameo, I've been doing those quite a bit lately. So anyway, I'm around. If you write me, I'll write you back.
Okay, well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, again, we were honored to have you today. We really appreciate it, and we really enjoyed a great interview with you today. Thank you so much for your time. You've been listening.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure in these dark and dreary COVID days. It's because it's been smoky here in California. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, how are you near the fires? Are you far away? How are you?
I'm fairly far away, but the smoke is everywhere.
Yeah,
and the smoke is horrible in LA.
Yeah.
So even up here on my mountain near Malibu, it's bad everywhere. It's better today than it's been in days. So, but it's just another thing that we have to deal with. You know,
I'm sure
when you live in California. So, anyway, I hope we can address the global warming issues and get down to trying to save the planet, Yep.
And I hope we can get this fire put out and get this over with, before, a lot of people are killed or, a lot of people, lose their homes and everything as well. So, hoping for the best for California. Definitely. So again, you've been listening to Fowl Players Radio, Suze Lanier-Bramlett. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.